My name is Fonda Marshall. I'm 30 years old now. And exactly 1 year ago, on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, I stood in my wedding dress and walked away from my own wedding. But it wasn't cold feet. It wasn't nerves. It was something much deeper. On my wedding day, I found my father, the man who raised me, who worked 35 years fixing pipes so I could have a better life, standing in a hallway with no seat, while 9 people from my husband's family sat at the head table that was supposed to belong to my parents. Table 1, front and center, that's where Dave and Linda Marshall belonged. Instead, someone had moved them all the way to table 14, the very last table in the room, wedged between the swinging kitchen door and a trash can. When I asked my soon-to-be husband why, I heard him say something about my father that cracked open every lie I'd been telling myself for 2 years. I stood there in that hallway, 200 guests waiting on the other side of the wall, my veil still pinned in my hair, and I made a decision I cannot take back, and wouldn't if I could. What I did, what he said, and what happened to his family afterward, that's the story I'm about to tell you tonight. Before we go any further, if you're the kind of person who values real stories about family, respect, and courage, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps these videos reach more people. Also, drop your city and what time it is where you are right now in the comments. I love knowing who's watching with me. I read every single one. All right, let's go back. It was the morning of June 14th. The last morning I ever woke up as Garrett Whitfield's fiancé. I was in Millfield, Ohio, a small town of about 8,000 people. The kind of place where the pharmacist knows your blood type and the mail carrier still calls your dog by name. I grew up on Birch Lane in a modest 2-bedroom house my father bought the year I was born. He paid that house off in 22 years. On my 16th birthday, he wrote the final check, folded it, and took the whole family to Dairy Queen to celebrate like we just won the lottery. My dad, Dave Marshall, was a plumber. 35 years with the same pair of steel-toed boots, resoled 4 times. His knees gave out around year 20. His back followed around year 30. But I never once saw him call in sick when I was in school. He'd come home at 6 o'clock, scrub the grease off his hands with that orange soap that smelled like gasoline and citrus, and he'd always ask me the same question. Fonda, what did you learn today? My mom, Linda, worked the cafeteria line at Millfield Elementary. She served lunch to 400 kids every single day, and she knew every child by name. She knew who was lactose intolerant, who had peanut allergies, and which kids came to school hungry because there was no food at home. Those kids always got extra helpings. Always. We weren't wealthy. I shared a bedroom wall with the water heater. My winter coat in 7th grade was my cousin's hand-me-down from 2 years earlier, but our door was always open. Dinner was always hot. And my parents never once made me feel like I was missing anything. I worked my way through college on scholarships and student loans, became a nurse practitioner at the community clinic on Route 9. Paid off every penny of my debt by the time I was 28. I built that life with my own 2 hands, but the foundation, that was Dave and Linda Marshall. I used to think a family like that was enough for anyone. I was wrong. I met Garrett Whitfield on a Tuesday in October, 2 years before the wedding. His father, Richard, came into the clinic for a routine physical. Garrett drove him. He was leaning against the reception counter when I walked through with a chart. He was tall, dark hair swept back. Jawline like it was designed in a boardroom. He smiled at me and I smiled back. We went to dinner that Friday, then again the next week, then every week after that. Garrett was charming in a way I wasn't used to. He opened doors, pulled out chairs, took me to a French restaurant in Columbus where the napkins felt heavier than my winter coat. The Whitfields were a different world. Real estate developers, 3 generations deep. Their name was on a subdivision, a commercial plaza, and a bronze plaque at the country club where they'd been members for 25 years. 5-bedroom house on 2 acres. Richard ran the company. Garrett managed acquisitions. His mother, Constance, chaired the Hope Foundation's annual gala, and sat on 2 nonprofit boards. The first time I met Constance, she wore cream silk and pearl earrings the size of dimes. She shook my hand, looked me up and down, and said with that polite smile, "A community clinic." How interesting. Garrett used to date Dr. Harrison's daughter from St. Luke's. Constance made sure to mention that. She smiled when she said it, but it wasn't really a smile. I told myself that's just how people talk in those circles. Stiff, performative, it didn't mean anything. Garrett squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "She'll warm up." She never did. But by then, I was already in love. And love has a dangerous way of making you explain away the things you should be running from. Garrett proposed 14 months later at the steakhouse his family owned. Private room, candles, string quartet, and Constance sitting 3 tables away. He called it a coincidence. I said yes anyway, because the ring on my finger wasn't from Constance. It was from the man who drove 40 minutes to bring me soup when I had the flu. The man who texted me good morning every single day. The man who said my parents were good people and that he couldn't wait to call Dave Dad. Then the wedding planning started, and the Garrett I thought I knew started to blur. Constance chose the venue, the Whitfield Country Club, not the little church on Maple Street where my parents were married. She chose the wedding planner. She chose the menu. When my mom gently suggested adding her famous fried chicken as one of the appetizers, Constance tilted her head and said, "That's sweet, Linda, but this is a seated dinner." "Not a potluck," my mother laughed it off. But I saw the way her hands tightened in her lap. Every time I pushed back, Garrett had the same answer. "Let Mom have this one, babe. After the wedding, it's just us, our own house. Our own rules." I wasn't a pushover. I want to be very clear about that. I made a calculated decision, lose the small battles now, win the war later. The venue didn't matter. The menu didn't matter. What mattered was the marriage, the 40 years after the party. That logic made sense, right up until I realized the small battles weren't small. They were rehearsals. And the wedding day wasn't the war. It was the final rehearsal. June 14th, 6 a.m. I woke up in my old bedroom at my parents' house. Sunlight coming through the curtains my mom sewed when I was 12. My dress, ivory satin tea-length, bought with my own savings, hung on the closet door. Constance had pushed for a designer gown. I said no. This was the one thing I kept for myself. By 10 a.m., I was at the Whitfield Country Club. The place looked like a magazine spread. White peonies in crystal vases, ivory linens, gold-rimmed chargers, 300 candles, a 12-piece string ensemble warming up in the garden. $85,000 worth of venue, decor, and catering, mostly paid for by the Whitfields. 200 guests were expected. Half from the Whitfield side, business associates, country club members, the mayor's wife, the Hendersons, the Porters. The other half were mine. My Aunt Grace from Akron, 3 nurses from the clinic, my college roommate, old neighbors from Birch Lane. People who drove pickup trucks and wore department store dresses and had no idea what a charger plate was. I noticed the imbalance early. The Whitfield guests filled the front rows and center tables. My people were scattered toward the edges. My maid of honor, Margaret, leaned over during the processional rehearsal and whispered, "Why are all your aunts way in the back?" I waved it off. "Probably just numbers. Their side has more guests." Margaret raised an eyebrow but didn't push. The ceremony happened at noon. I walked down the aisle. Garrett looked perfect. He always looked perfect. That was part of the problem. After the ceremony, while guests went to cocktail hour on the terrace, I slipped into the reception hall to check the final setup. Old nurse habit, I verify everything twice. The room was stunning. 20 round tables with white tablecloths and gold place cards. But when I reached table 1, the head table right in front of the dance floor and stage, something felt wrong. I picked up the first place card, Gerald Whitfield. Then the next, Lydia Whitfield. Thomas Whitfield, Mr. and Mrs. Porter, Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, 9 Whitfields and their associates. No marshals. My chest tightened. I checked every table until I found them. Table 14. The very last table, tucked against the far wall, right next to the swinging kitchen door. I could hear pots clanging on the other side. The chairs weren't the nice mahogany ones, they were padded folding chairs. A service cart with dirty glasses sat 2 feet away. The light above the table was a dim utility fixture, not a chandelier. Dave Marshall, Linda Marshall. I stared at those 2 place cards sitting next to a trash can with a foot pedal. I found the wedding coordinator, Diane. Who changed the seating chart? She didn't even blink. Mrs. Whitfield adjusted it this morning. She said the bride approved. I never approved anything. I stood in that beautiful room alone and did what I'd trained myself to do in the ER, triage. If I said nothing, my parents would sit there. They wouldn't complain. My dad would straighten his 2009 tie, the only good one he owned, and say, "It's fine." "Sweetheart," my mom would fold her napkin and pretend she couldn't hear the dishwashers running 6 feet behind her. And Constance would know she could put Dave and Linda Marshall anywhere she wanted, the back of the room, the parking lot, out of the frame entirely, and no one would say a word. Every holiday after this, every grandchild's birthday, they would always be table 14, the people who didn't quite fit. The ones you seat near the service entrance so the important guests don't have to look at them. I thought about my dad's hands, 35 years of copper pipes and joint compound. He could rebuild a bathroom in a day. He saved for 6 months to buy that suit. I thought about my mom's dress. She sewed it herself over 3 weekends, pins between her lips, squinting at the bobbin. These people fed me, raised me, drove through snowstorms to get me to school. And someone decided they belonged next to a trash can. I went to find Garrett. I thought he would fix it. I thought he would be angry on my behalf. I was wrong. I found him in the groomsmen's suite, adjusting his monogrammed silver cufflinks, a gift from Constance. Who moved my parents off the head table? He didn't even look up from the mirror. Mom rearranged some things this morning. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. They don't have seats, Garrett. Table 14 is next to the kitchen and the trash. He sighed, the sigh people make when they think you're being difficult. Fonda, we have 200 guests. Can we not do this right now? When then? After they've already sat there for 3 hours. He turned, face calm and patient, the face of a man who had practiced sounding reasonable while saying unreasonable things. Mom has her reasons. The Hendersons and Porters are important. I didn't say they were more important than my parents. He didn't have to. He put his hand on my arm, gentle, rehearsed. Baby, you're stressed. It's your wedding day. Let's get through dinner and I'll talk to Mom tomorrow. Tomorrow, that was always the answer. I searched his face for surprise, for anger, for guilt. There was nothing. He had known, maybe since morning, maybe longer. He knew and he still got dressed, fixed his cufflinks and checked his hair. I walked out. On my way back, I stopped at the welcome table and picked up a program. Page 2, with love and gratitude to our families. Below it, only Whitfield names. 4 lines, all Whitfield. My parents' names had been completely erased. In the version I approved 3 weeks earlier, I had written, "With deepest love to Dave and Linda Marshall, whose sacrifices made all of this possible." Constance had seen it. She hadn't objected. She just waited until the morning of the wedding and had everything reprinted. My parents weren't just moved to the back. They were erased. I found Margaret. One look at my face and she knew. I told her everything in 30 seconds flat. She didn't gasp. She didn't say, "Oh my God." She just closed her lipstick and asked, "What do you want to do?" I didn't know yet. But I knew I needed to hear one more thing. I walked back toward the groomsmen's suite. The door was cracked open, 3, maybe 4 inches. Enough. Constance's voice came through first. Low. Controlled, dangerous. "Garrett, look at her father. That suit is from 2005. And her mother, my God, did she sew that dress herself? They look poor. You cannot have them sitting at the front table. Our guests will think, I know, Mom. The Hendersons and Porters are sitting right there. These are the people who matter, Garrett. Not, I'm sorry, but not a plumber and a lunch lady. You're right, the Marshalls are fine in the back. It's more appropriate. Then Constance, quieter, you should have listened to me from the start. She doesn't belong here. I pressed my hand against the wall. The hallway tilted. My father, the man who spent 35 years on his knees under kitchen sinks, who drove 4 hours round trip every weekend to visit me in college because he thought the dining hall food wasn't enough, reduced to a plumber. My mother, the woman who fed 400 children every day with kindness and extra helpings, called a lunch lady like it was something shameful. And the man I was supposed to marry said, "You're right. There are sentences you can never unhear." This was one of them. I pushed the door open. Constance turned. Her face froze for half a second, then rearranged into that polished smile. "Fonda, sweetheart, you look stunning." "I heard everything." Garrett's jaw tightened. "Heard what?" I repeated their words back to them, word for word. Constance stepped forward, hands clasped like the chairwoman she was. "This is just a seating arrangement. We're trying to make sure. You called my father a plumber like it was an insult. You called my mother a lunch lady like she should be ashamed." Garrett tried the calm voice again. "You're emotional right now, Fonda. It's your wedding day. Let's take a breath." "I am breathing, Garrett. I've never been clearer." I looked straight at him. "I cannot marry into a family that speaks about my parents this way." I turned and walked out. He didn't follow me. That was the last answer I needed. Margaret was waiting. I told her exactly what I heard. She was quiet for 5 seconds, then asked, "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking I can't sign my name to this." She nodded. "Okay, here's what you need to know." The ceremony was symbolic. You haven't signed the marriage license yet. Diane has it. The plan was to sign it after dinner in front of everyone. Legally, I was not married yet. No signature. No marriage, no annulment needed, no divorce. I had a window. Margaret put her hand on my arm. "I'm your lawyer and your best friend, in that order tonight. Whatever you choose, I'm standing next to you." I went to table 14. My dad was sitting upright, hands on his knees, trying to look comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. Mom was smoothing a crease in the dress she had sewn herself. A server pushed through the kitchen door behind them. It banged open, letting out heat and clatter. Mom flinched. I sat down with them. "Honey, you should be up front," Mom said. "My family is here," I replied, "so I'm here." Dad studied my face. He knew me too well. "Fonda, don't do anything on our account." "I'm not doing this for you, Dad. I'm doing this for me." I looked across the room at Margaret and gave her a single nod. She nodded back. I took a deep breath and stood up. The walk from table 14 to the stage was only 60 feet. It felt like a mile, heels clicking on the hardwood, conversations fading table by table. The room growing quieter with every step. I reached the stage. The MC, Derek, faltered. I took the microphone from his hand, and I told 200 people the truth. "Thank you all for being here today. I know you came to celebrate a wedding, and I owe you the truth about what's happening in this room. Most of you know me as Garrett's fiancée. But before that, and after tonight, I am Dave and Linda Marshall's daughter. My parents are sitting at table 14. I'd like everyone to look at table 14 for a moment. 12 hours ago, they were supposed to be at this table, table 1. That was the seating chart I approved. This morning, someone changed every place card at the head table. My parents were moved to the last table in the room, next to the kitchen door, next to the trash can. That person was Constance Whitfield. When I confronted my fiancé, he told me not to make a scene, and when I overheard him speaking to his mother, he said, "The Marshalls are fine in the back. The Hendersons and Porters are more important." I let the room absorb it. Then I told them who my parents really were. My father fixed pipes for 35 years. He has 2 bad knees and 1 good suit, the one he's wearing tonight. He saved for 6 months to buy it. My mother serves lunch to 400 children every day. She knows every name, every allergy, and makes sure the hungry kids get extra. They saved $12,000 over 15 years to help pay for this wedding. That money covered the catering you're all eating tonight. And Constance Whitfield put the people who paid for your dinner next to the garbage. The room broke, gasps, forks put down, people shifting uncomfortably. I continued, voice steady. "I came here today to start a marriage built on mutual respect. but I cannot sign my name to a marriage where my family is treated as an embarrassment. I will not raise children who learn that love means hiding where you come from. I unpinned my veil, folded it carefully, and set it on the edge of the stage. To the guests from Millfield, thank you for coming. We're going home. To the Whitfields, I wish you well. But I deserve better than a man who sits in silence while my father is called poor. And my parents deserve better than table 14. I placed the microphone down gently and stepped off the stage. I walked straight back to table 14. My parents stood. Mom was crying quietly. Dad hugged me tight. Margaret met us with my coat and bag. She had already called a car. The four of us walked out, past the silent string quartet, past 200 stunned faces. Behind us, I heard Constance's voice. She's lost her mind. And Garrett calling my name. I didn't turn around. The door closed, and for the first time in 2 years, I could breathe. That night, I sat at my parents' kitchen table, the same one I did homework on since 3rd grade. At 9:15, Margaret called. The marriage license was never signed. Legally, I was never married. Not for a single second. I blocked all 3 of them, Garrett, Constance, and Richard. 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. Positive, 2 pink lines. I cried on the bathroom floor, not from joy, but because my life had just become 10 times more complicated. I told Garrett by email, through lawyers only. He responded with pleading, then threats, then predictions of ruin. Constance tried to call the house. My dad answered and calmly told her to speak to my lawyer. I hired a strong custody attorney. Filed everything properly. The fallout for the Whitfields came quietly but steadily. Jim Henderson pulled out of a major development project with Richard. Constance was quietly asked to step back from chairing the Hope Foundation Gala. None of it was orchestrated by me. 200 people simply went home and talked about what they witnessed. A month later, Garrett showed up at my parents' house to apologize in person. My dad met him on the porch. Garrett said he should have stood up for us. Dad replied calmly, "My daughter made herself clear. If you want to be part of this child's life, the lawyer has the paperwork." Then he closed the door. Not a slam, just a quiet, final click. 5 months later, I moved into my own small apartment 3 blocks from my parents. Mom sewed curtains. Dad fixed everything that was broken and built a shelf in the nursery from reclaimed barn wood. Elise Marie Marshall was born on a Tuesday morning at 6:14 a.m. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, brown eyes, a scream that could wake the dead. I gave her my name, Marshall. The name of a plumber and a lunch lady who never once made their daughter feel like she wasn't enough. 1 year later, Elise is 13 months old. She has my eyes, her father's jaw, and a laugh that sounds like a hiccup. I'm back full-time at the clinic and was just promoted to shift lead. We still have Sunday dinner at my parents' house every week. The table is old, mismatched, with a chip in the corner. No place cards, no gold chargers. Just fried chicken, mashed potatoes, corn on the cob, love and laughter. Nobody sits next to the trash. This is my table one. I'm not telling you this story to say you should do what I did. Every situation is different. Every breaking point is different. But if you're sitting in your own version of table 14 right now, if there's a room in your life where you're always pushed to the back, always made to feel like you should be grateful just to have a chair, I want you to know, you can stand up. You don't need a microphone or 200 witnesses. You just need to know, deep in your bones, that the people you love deserve better. And if the person you chose agrees when someone calls your family not good enough, then they didn't choose you. They chose comfort. That's not love. That's a seating chart. My name is Fonda Marshall. I'm a nurse, a mother, a daughter, and I have never been prouder of where I come from. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up for your family like this? Type ***, table 1 in the comments if you've ever chosen your family over comfort. Have you ever been made to feel like your parents didn't fit in? Type, not table 14 if you know that pain. Would you have answered Richard's letter? I'm still figuring that one out myself. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. There's another story in the description I think you'll connect with. Thank you for staying until the end. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of your people.